So a lot of good documentaries out there. I mean, you got Netflix or Hulu or whatnot. You got limitless documentaries to choose from. 2024 here. I felt like we were watching a documentary unfold, and we had the ups and ups and ups, and then we got the beginning of the season, and then we go way down, and then everything's left for dead, and the message boards have you run out of here. And then you guys, I refer to it as having the audacity to compete almost. Everybody's left you for dead, and then you just keep competing, and you guys spike it at the end of the year. I know what it felt like for me. What did 2024 feel like in your seat?
Well, I think it gave me conviction about how we do what we do. You know, I think we really committed to building the program a certain way in the very beginning, kind of stuck to our guns throughout an incredible couple of years. And just to see the character of our team kind of show up, you know, I think the football finally started to look the way we want it to look. But then you've got an obligation to the players that you're leading, and that's really what is consuming you in that moment. And then to see them kind of come alive, you know, that was ultimately, I think the difference is they started to believe they could do it, you know, and then they're a dangerous team, and you're just proud of the players and the approach that they took through it.
I think one of several differences between the man on the street versus the kind of athlete that you have in the walls at a place like this, or someone on your staff at a place like this, is how much you have to block out the noise, but also how mentally tough you have to be when stuff goes sideways. If you have a bad day at work and you work for an insurance company, you just go home and do it the next day. If you have a bad day at work here, 2 million people have something to say about it. Yeah. If you lose games, 20 million people have something to say about it. And you were talking about that, and it takes me back to around mid-year when I think the biggest fear is, they've lost some games. Are the guys going to quit? Is the locker room going to get lost? And you just said exactly what I remember thinking. I remember thinking, they don't look like they've stopped playing at all. They don't look like they've stopped competing at all. Now, we know how the season turned out now. Everyone knows how the season turned out. But in the moment, it's got to be refreshing, or it's got to be a validation of the process, like you talked about, to know I'm looking guys in the eye. We have not gotten the result we want to, but yet everybody's still sticking their face in the fan for me.
Yeah, I mean, that group is special. You choose blame or accountability all the time. You get put in difficult situations, you face adversity, and that group didn't point the finger. I mean, it was total ownership of the situation. They kind of got back to back, and they just went to work. And literally, when we were in those difficult times kind of coming out of that, it was literally one day at a time, you know. We literally had a theme of 1 week that was 1 day contract. You know, like if we were doing a documentary on you today, okay, at the end of the day, based off your work, would you get the call to come back the next day? You know, so I just think with this group, you know, it's not about yesterday, it's not about tomorrow, it's about today. You know, and I think that they really bought into that, you know, and I think they got better. And we learned how to compete. You know, we learned that the work was working, that they could do it. Belief's powerful, man. And you can kind of see that group kind of gain some confidence. We recruited 3 big groups of high school players. And we were very calculated about how we used the portal. And I'll be honest, after that first month, you know, I'm sitting here thinking maybe we misjudged it a little bit. But I would tell you that they grew up. You know, it was big for them early, but all of a sudden, you know, right in there around Kentucky, it was like, okay, we can do this. And then obviously played really good football down the stretch.
I think one of the rules I learned back in the day when I first started trying to watch college football and then call myself predicting college football is I realized not everyone is ready to be the full version of themselves as a team in week 1. Yeah. If you're blessed and you're fortunate, you just come out of the gate on fire. Mm-hmm. Or if you're going to be bad that year, at least do me the favor of being bad from the beginning. Don't be good early then fade late, because it just makes me look dumb when I pick you to win. Yeah. But you're illustrating the front side of that coin in that you come out of the gate not like you want to at all. And everyone's questioning things, and you're human, so you may question some things.
Yeah.
But then you find out, oh, we actually had it in place. We actually had the answers. It just, for whatever reason, it didn't gel until it gelled. And then most folks are ready for the season to end come December. I imagine you sat there and said, we can play 5 more weeks. We're hot right now. I'd actually love for the season to go into January.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I think when you're building a football team now, you're really trying to get to a point where you have a veteran team. You know, I think retention is more important than it's ever been in terms of the makeup of the roster. If you look at the playoff and these teams that are having success, they're veteran teams. Now, sure, there's some marquee players. There's a certain level of talent to get to the show. But the veteran team and the makeup of that locker room, the mindset, the attitude, the mentality, and what a veteran player brings to that adversity. I mean, nobody's playing the schedules that we play in this league unscathed. I mean, I think those days are over, you know. So you're really building a team that if you can get hot at the right time and get in and you're battle tested, then you can go the distance. You know, I think we've learned that the last couple of years.
You did have to have the mentality for a long time that if you lose a game, it's a crisis because it may or may not have cost you your postseason goals. And we're in this era now where Ohio State loses 2 games, including their final regular season game, and they end up buzzsaw in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I remember we had Ryan Day on the show in this format this time last year. I asked him, what's one thing you've adjusted? And sure enough, he's sitting there saying, if we do what we're supposed to do, we're going to be playing into late January.
Yeah.
So we got to shape ourselves. We got to mold all of our processes to make sure we peak at the right time. Now, he didn't say this, but it ended up being at the expense of losing a couple of games.
Sure.
But they ultimately got where they wanted to go. I assume maybe with every new class that comes in this new era of the expanded playoff and whatnot, they're less conditioned to think one loss is the end of the world.
Yeah.
But you've been around for a long time. So kind of like me, like
Sure.
you're having to retrain your mind to understand we lost today. That sucks. But also, literally everything's still on the table for us.
Yeah, do you have the maturity to kind of hit the reset button week after week? You know, and I think that's where you almost build your messaging throughout the entire year. You know, I think it's key to recruit the right kind of people too. You know, we recruited every one of these groups that we've added to the team. The message has been you got to be up for the challenge. Like it is not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. Like you got to come here. You're part of the solution. We've got some issues. This is going to be a journey, and you got to be committed to that. I think that helped us last year when we're going through some of that stuff because we framed it up that way in the very beginning. And now you got a veteran team coming back that is hungry. They see the light at the end of the tunnel. We do have some marquee players, but I think what you're saying is right. Every player is going to contribute. Like these young players, you got to get them ready. I mean, the depth you're going to need, the roles you got to build, the anticipation of the injury. Hey, this guy's out this week, this guy's out the next week. You got to really develop the entire roster. This summer that we have coming up is really important.
I was talking to a coordinator in this league the other day. He said something, it made total sense to me, but I'd never thought about it at this angle. Because I asked him, who do you consult with? Where are you looking? What are you reading? Who are you listening to? And he said, I have spoken to as many JUCO coaches as I can this spring. I said, interesting. Go on. And he said, well, that's the group that has had to make a living off a 2-year model instead of a 4-year model. And he said, yes, we still technically run a 4-year model, but more and more and more, we got guys spending 12 or 24 months in our program as opposed to, the full 4-year experience. And I'm just curious whether you call it looking at the JUCO model or not. Like, how much have you had to rearrange your thinking to comply with that?
Yeah, it's a catch-22, right? Like, they need the reps, okay, but, you've got to have an environment where you get them to the show. And I think there's a greater good concept. You're always, as a coach, you're pushing the gas, but then it's like, hey, we got to get them to the show. So the challenge is, like, these young players have to be ready to embrace this role. They're not ready for it, and I think you have to commit to that. Good example, we played Miles Graham and Aaron Childs at inside linebacker last year. We played them a possession every half, just as a long-term commitment to their growth. We may need them. We have to keep them engaged. It's going to be important for this offseason, for their development. Just think you see each player a little bit different than you used to see them, you know. I think the portal affects that a little bit. But I'm not going to compromise the concept of building a program. I just think there's a place for starting a race somewhere, finish the race somewhere, building a home where you can come back the rest of your life, get the degree, connect with the alumni, learn some life lessons. I think that's still out there. I'm hopeful that with some revenue share and maybe some sanity in the collective, the endorsement world, that we can get back to that and still pay the players like they deserve to be paid. I think that world's out there, and I think we're built for it.
I always tell myself if I were a head coach, I would really emphasize legacy this day and age. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know that I would just count on a 20-year-old to be thinking as a 50 or 60-year-old. It's not realistic. I didn't think that way when I was 20. I barely think that way now. But you're talking about the value of a guy who started at middle linebacker for 4 years at the University of Florida, coming back and speaking in Ocala or speaking in like Lake Worth 15 years from now. And the value that you stepping on that stage and being introduced that way has. And you may be able to leave right now and go get a couple $100,000 more somewhere else, and it may benefit you in the short term, but long term. How often do you have talks with guys about legacy and about how all things may not even seem equal right now, but there's value to retention and sticking something out? And it's the age-old adage that your grandfather and father taught you, but as a college athlete, there's a little bit more on the line than your typical guy out there.
Yeah, I think it's easier to have that conversation now. I think we went through the chaos of the market kind of finding its place. You know, I mean, I think there was every 6 months for a couple of years there, you had no indication of what the market was, what was real, what was not real. Now we have somewhat of a feel for what the market is. And look, you know, you're going through free agency right now. Like if they pick up the phone and call you and triple your salary to move you to California instead of Nashville, you're picking up and moving to California, right? So I think you got to be careful to get frustrated with the player. And again, at the University of Florida, we get to decide who joins our team. I think we have to be really intentional about doing our homework on the front end. Because look, you invest financial resources, but you're also investing in the development of the player. You know, that's the thing. That's where retention is king, in my opinion. Building a veteran team and getting in position where you got a true team that knows each other, that has relationships. Because there's going to be adversity, and I think that those things are of value these days.
What are some of the things you put in place when you first got here that if I were to have checked in with you your first year, then I leave the country for a couple of years and I come back today and I look around, I would say, wow, that's different. This department looks different. These people weren't here. Where did those people go? Like, I know everybody evolves every year and there's change every year. What specific areas would you say, yeah, that, and that? I've changed a lot there.
You know, I think every bit of it matters. You know, I mean, I think we stuck to the true model. We built an entire organization that's the premise is to make life-changing impact on the person, the student, and the football player. And even through some of these changes, we've stuck to that, knowing who we want to be. You know, I mean, like, I'm going to coach football somewhere, right? I know what I want my program to look like. I know what my purpose is. I think you have to be values-based and you have to be purpose-driven. And that recenters you when you go through adversity, right? I think we've been through that. You know, we're committed to all parts of the development of the player, you know, and I think that ultimately that's why we have the team that we have today. We've been able to recruit to that. We've been able to retain to that. And then I think we're finally, like the team that we have today, there's only 4 players on our team that were here when we first got here. You know, so I think we have really good relationships with the parents. We know the circle of influence, and we have players that are growing and improving. And it's not easy here. I mean, we make it very challenging here. So yeah, I just still believe in the game. You know, I think sure we're tweaking our systems behind the scenes in terms of evaluation, analytics, how we practice, sports science, the role of creative media in a marketing dynamic that's coming. All these things we're tinkering with, but I think last year gave me conviction about how we put this thing together and what we're built for in the future.
I always think about it, if I were running a program, I have no background in sports science, but if I were the head coach, I'm making the decisions on who to hire if I'm going to make a change, or like creative media. Like most coaches don't have a background in that, but it's an integral part of their program, especially the way the public sees it, future players see it. How do you know, or what does it take to convince you in those areas where you don't have personal expertise that change is needed, this is the way we need to go?
Yeah, you've got, I think the first thing is you got to have really good leadership in each of those areas. And then are the relationships healthy? Culturally, do they fit? And then there's a bottom line. At every part of what we do, there's a bottom line, not only for myself, but all parts of the organization. So when we do make those changes, I think it's ultimately about values-based, purpose-driven. What's the purpose of what we do? We're trying to affect the long term of the player, and you know, are you doing your job and are you contributing to that? So we've made a couple changes each offseason, and I think it's all about the obligation you have to the player.
You pride yourself on being pretty even keel, and observing you from afar, like that's what it feels like. I don't sense like a different attitude emanating from you when things are bad versus when things are good. If it is, you bottle it up really well. But if I were, you know, to do one of those things where they put like the hidden cameras in your car, where you know you're alone, no one's watching you, and you're driving home after the Ole Miss win, and then I split screen it and I see you driving home after the Miami game last year, when it's just you, as much as you're willing to let the public in, like how different are you attitudinally? Like what mood are you in?
Yeah, no, I think I've gotten a lot better, is what I would say. I think I learned a lot of lessons as a young coach. But yeah, I mean, I think that for me, it's always about, I'm thinking about what's next. You know, I mean, I think ultimately, what's the next challenge based off of what's happened? You know, where do we go from here? It's just so important, I think, to be consistent, to be fair. And then I just think people respond to that. You know, I think that you got to be yourself. You know, if I've learned anything in this profession, it's like you got to be yourself. And that's who I am. And I think that you try to surround yourself with people that complement you, you know, from a personality standpoint, from a skill set standpoint. So, yeah, it's about what's next. I think there's always a problem, you know, open up every door, there's a problem waiting on you. So I love it. I mean, I love every single part of the job. And that the season presents so many leadership challenges. There's nothing like stepping into that arena, because you know you got to put yourself out there. That takes a certain level of courage, not knowing that you're going to get the return that you want. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's special. I mean, there's only 16 of these, right? So, if you'd have told me 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago that I'd get a chance to do this, it's pretty humbling.
You said something there. It's pretty raw, and I don't want to just let it fly by the camera and then we move on. You said there comes a time where you just got to put yourself out there. You got to throw the headset on. You got to take the field, and your work is going to be judged on the field against someone else's work, and then who knows how many million people are watching, and your family's in the stands, and everyone's pulling for you until you do bad, and then they're like, nope, never mind, next. Then you got to go to a press conference and explain yourself, and then you got to have a staff meeting first thing Monday morning. But that exposure part of knowing that's going to happen multiple Saturdays every fall. I don't even know what the question is per se, other than to say, what does that do to your adrenaline or your accountability? I doubt there's ever a problem with a lack of energy.
Yeah.
Knowing that that's inevitably coming every year, multiple times per year.
Yeah, it's pretty special. I was actually in New York talking to some alumni, some investors of the program.
I heard you went up there to go to the Knicks game. That's what I heard.
Well, I found out that Knicks game timed up pretty good, but I think that was a good reminder. You know, I mean, you walk in that arena and that crowd turns up. You know, that brings back some of those competitive juices. But, yeah, there's nothing like it. And I think that the preparation for those, the people you do it with, you know, I think if you're doing this game the right way, there's some really unique relationships. There's some great stories. You're seeing your players for who they are, what they've been through. And then you've got a staff that is loyal, that you want to do your best work for, right? So, and this game is unique, right? I mean, like the number of people that are involved, the amount of preparation compared to the amount of opportunities that you get to compete. I wish we could play 25 games, you know. I mean, I think we'd get the return on the investment. But, yeah, it's special. And I think this will be my 21st year as a coach, and obviously have experience as a player. There's nothing like this game. And I think the human element of the game is what makes it special.
Is that not really crazy? If I were to bring someone in who doesn't know anything about college football and I were to take them on these trips with me, they would see just immaculate facilities, 90, 100,000 seat stadiums, and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, whether it's Florida or any of a number of places in this conference. And then I tell them, now here's the thing. It all comes down to 12 games a year. And in this building here, they only play 7 or 8, but then they have a neutral site game every year. So then it's just 7 dates a year that this building is in use for football. That person would say, there's no way. That's a waste of money. That doesn't make any sense in the world. But yet it's not, because it's a big business. But I'm like you. I look at it from your perspective as much as I can, and I say, I can't believe that all this attention and all this year-round detail. We're in the building in May. And folks are grinding in May, and the first game's like 4 months away, but it's all based on 12 days a year. It's really crazy.
Yeah, the game presents a lot of opportunities. I mean, I think that each one of these kids on our team, that's the gratification you get from coaching. As you know, this is year 4 for us. So when I'm looking at each one of those guys, every one of those lockers, you know, those guys are, I can remember being in their homes. I know their family, right? I know their story. You've had a ton of interaction with them. So, you know, the game presents opportunity, and they love football, you know, but can we use the game of football to help them grow as people, obviously prioritize the education. How many places, this summer first day of class today, every player in the building today working out, you know, discretionary work. And, you know, we got a motivated group, and they're up for the challenge.
You just said guys love football. I recruited them. They love football. Now, most people watching this would say, well, of course they love football. They play it. Of course they love football. They're on scholarship. I think one of the big glass break moments for me, going from being someone who viewed the game on TV to being around it, is I realized not everyone who plays the game loves it. Some of them are blessed with God-given ability, so they go do it. And this is basketball, this is baseball, football. I would think it's a little harder because there's a more physical element to it that would test your mettle. But you're talking about guys who love football, guys who are on fire for it, and they've got tenacity and they've got passion. And you don't meet them and say, I'm going to have to put that in them. They just have it, and it bleeds out of them. Do you think that is less available today than it was a generation ago? Because I've heard a lot of other coaches say that. They say, the athletic skill is there, maybe more so today than it has ever been because of technology and advancement in strength and conditioning. But the desire and the passion, that's what's in shorter supply. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that they're in shock, the level of commitment, the investment that's required. I think initially when we get these rookie players, you know, talent's assumed. If you got a seat in that team meeting room, talent is assumed. Now it's about, are you willing to do all the things that require no talent at all, right? So, and then you go to work on skill, you go to work on knowledge, the competitive spirit, the resiliency, the character, all these things that will allow you to make the most of your talent. I think that ultimately what I've learned is we need to be more demanding than we've ever been. I think sometimes we're in this portal NIL world, maybe those first couple of years, we're all unsure of how to go about it. I think after year 2, I was like, look, I'm not waiting on anybody to tell me how this is going to go. We're going to do it our way, and if it works, it works. And I think that we probably it's more stringent than it's ever been, and I think they need that. I think they don't grow unless they go through struggle, right? So I think we've got, the way I always say it is like our program should be design difficulty, right? We have to have the right combination of failure and success. But if you're developing and you're going about this the right way, you're going to have a lot of good days and bad days, but you're going in the right direction.
This is a really competitive conference, so you've got you and 15 other head coaches in this league, and you're ultimately going to be judged by how you fare against them. So there's certainly the competitive element, but there's also a peer-based element of we're the only ones who really know what this is like. And do you ever find yourself sometimes thinking, I wish for the collective good of the game, we would have some agreement on some things. Like I wish everyone would run their program like that. I wish every program would practice like financial and budgetary-based discipline so that there really is nowhere to go. There really is no like outlet where, well, if they don't like it here, they can just run over there because they know it's easy over there. Do you ever think like that, or is it a waste of time to think like that?
Yeah, I think ultimately, that's what I would say. I really kind of flipped the script in my head. It's like, look, we're going to control what we can control. We get to add, we get to decide who joins our team. And then ultimately, you just have to get comfortable with attrition. I would tell you the last year and a half, we have the resources in place. Hey, we lose a player, we'll go get a player. I think it's more about the player being committed to the long haul. But yeah, I think we're getting closer. I think we made a lot of progress with the AFCA this year, the collaboration with the recruiting calendar. I think there's within the SEC. This is my 4th year, but I would say a lot of my peers say that it's better than it's ever been in terms of input and actually trying to solve some of these problems. So we're all living it together.
There we go. I asked that question because there's a huge, just like overarching theme right now within the sport. You could call it a cloud or a rainbow. Something, though, is over the sport right now of everyone asking, what's in the best interest of college football? And right now you've got head coaches who are tasked with looking out for their program. Same with their athletic director and their president. Yeah. Their league commissioners, their job is to look out for their league. There's really no one whose job it is. Just look out for the best interest of college football. So then the question is, okay, well, how do you create that role? Who would have that role? What would you call that role? But independent of all those questions, because I don't know the answers to those, it's always nice to hear someone who's behind the curtain like you say, you don't need this voice from on high to tell you that you have a certain level of responsibility to serve the game as you serve the University of Florida as well.
Yeah, I think as a coach, you're trying to field a competitive team, but you're also kind of protecting what you think the game is all about at the same time, right? So we do need more collaboration. I think you're talking about a historic time, right? Like they're going to be doing a documentary 10 years from now. You're going to be narrating it. But yeah, just think that our game needs structure. We need parameters. We need some type of guidance. And I think what we've done is we just said we're going to create our own rules, because you can spend all day, every day talking about what we could do, we should do, but you got to kind of create your own system. So, I'm hopeful that we are getting closer. We live in a here and now dynamic, and we're under the gun we're always evaluating and recruiting. And how we acquire talent is directly affected by this settlement. Rev share, the NIL space, how that's going to be evaluated by Deloitte. That's what keeps me up at night. It's like, what are the parameters around this settlement, and how is that going to affect my ability to keep bringing talent to the University of Florida, knowing that we're going to run between the lines and we're going to be expected to be competitive. And we're close. We just need to keep adding good pieces to the puzzle, and the rules around how we acquire players. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty.
Here's a question that I get a lot from viewers, so I'll just echo it to you. If you're a head coach, the amount of stuff you have to have knowledge of today is much more voluminous than 20 years ago. So some guys take it upon themselves to try and learn everything about everything and have their hand on everything.
Yeah.
Others say, I'm going to be smart enough to know what I don't know, and I'm going to delegate. And then there's a lot in the middle of those two.
Yeah.
Where have you fallen on that spectrum?
Yeah, I think you've got a framework in each part of the organization. You've got kind of some expectations, your vision for that area, and then you just try to bring in really talented people that kind of fit the culture within the organization, and you empower them to go. There's a fine line in there. You don't want to micromanage them so they can go create and be themselves, and then you let them do their thing. I think for me, I find myself delegating in the areas where, and then I think kind of my time is built around the strengths, evaluating players, visiting with the offensive staff, and then I think you're going against the defensive staff. We have an incredible personnel department. Continuity in the staff is a big deal. Everybody likes to talk about there's a portal with coaches too, right? The support staff. So I think you're always looking for the next person that can bring some things to the table and help you win.
How do you get that organization operating, knowing that staff turnover is coming, to the point where it's so seamless that I don't want to speak disrespectfully, but from a practical standpoint, it's like we just lost a gear.
Yeah.
Let's toss another gear in there that fits the machine so that the machine keeps spinning the way it's supposed to. Because I would imagine that's kind of how it has to be.
Yeah, you got to layer out each part of the organization, so attrition can't have one part of the engine blow up and the whole train stops, right? So I think you try to layer it out, and then you can survive some of that attrition. Obviously, look, there's points in every area, right? Every day we're competing to try to gain an advantage in every part of the organization. So, hire good people, create layers, job flows, job descriptions, workflow, and then rinse, repeat, and try to improve your process in each area, right? So I think there's delegation, there's empowerment, and then I think you got to have some layers to protect yourself.
When you zoom it out a little bit, you can look at your career, Florida, before Florida. If you're talking to someone who's not a coach, they're just looking for advice. Like, Uncle Billy, I need advice. I'm having a tough time right now. I don't know what I want to do. Or I know what I want to do, but I don't know, I'm in a little bit of a rut. Or, Uncle Billy, I think I may be on the chopping block. I think maybe I need to reinvent myself a little bit. What are some of the specific points along the journey for you that you find yourself continuing to go back to? And it's like, I tell this story all the time or that story all the time. I got them. I know you have to have them as well.
Yeah, I think we're all a product of the experiences we have, the people we've met. I always tell people, go expose yourself to the best at what you want to do. And I think ultimately I've been very blessed to be around not only really some legendary head coaches, but also great assistant coaches, great support staff members. I think you want to go learn from the best, and I think I'm a product of all the people that I've worked with. I was the son of a high school coach that knew I wanted to teach and coach, but then here we go, right? This college thing takes off, and then it's, I think couple pivotal moments. I'd got let go at Clemson, and I was regrouping, just married, and then it's what is the next step? And you kind of got to invest, even if you got to go backwards. I think that first year at Alabama as an analyst, I would say that was my 11th year. And I would say I learned more in that year than I learned the prior 10. and you think you know until you're right in the middle of that thing. So professional development is paramount, and I think we kind of build that culture within our staff of, hey, look, there's someone out there that we can learn from, and we need to continue to learn as we go.
Well, it's always interesting to talk to anyone who came through that whole thing as Saban was at Alabama, because a lot of guys did that. A lot of guys, from the classical sense, took a backwards move career-wise.
That's right.
But more and more guys kept doing it to the point where even on the outside looking in, you realized, well, they're not all idiots. There's a reason why they're doing it, and there's a lot of word of mouth in that business, and you're telling the story there. You go from, having an on-the-field job and everyone knows your name, but then you're not there anymore, and you're just a lowly analyst, but yet it was one of the most pivotal moments of your professional and personal life.
Yeah, I was 30 years old at the time, so I was relatively still young. I was fortunate. I'm hired at Clemson at 26. I'm extremely young to be the tight end coach, to run recruiting, and then here we go. I'm calling plays at 28 years old. I didn't know if the ball was pumped or stuffed back then, So I had experience. We didn't have children at the time, and we were able to invest a year, and we were extremely grateful for that. So, and then, obviously you're working with Coach Saban, but it's the other people, the network of people that go out there and are in the NFL and Power 4 football. I've been fortunate. I've worked at FCS. I've coached FCS football. I've coached Group of 5 football. I've been in the ACC, the SEC, the Pac-12. I've been on the West Coast. I was telling somebody the other day, people don't understand, like, as an assistant college football coach, you go all over the country. You've been in every type of home, every type of school, and I think it really shapes your perspective. I'm thankful for every step of the way. I wouldn't be who I am today without all of it.
What would you ever tell a guy who is in a similar position to you when you got let go at Clemson, and they've got a wife, they may have family at that point in terms of children, they may not, but they may tell you, hey, the added pressure on me is I'm hearing from my significant other or my family, maybe football's not for me. Maybe I need to go get a normal job, because you've had a lot of guys work for you. You got a lot of folks come to you for advice. You hear all kinds of situations, but something like that, where you see kind of a version of yourself from a generation ago. What's the kind of feedback you give folks like that?
Well, typically those situations, the person pretty well, and I think that, to me, each one of these situations is different. I think that you take pride in having really good relationships with the people that work for you. If somebody's asking you that question, you probably have a really good relationship. So I think their family, their dynamic, their career, where they're at. It's one of the great things about the game, and I would tell you as a head coach, you take a lot of pride in seeing the people that are under your leadership improve and grow and get other opportunities. And you can't help but be proud of them. So I think when you get to those tough spots, it's all about what that individual needs, and you got to have some awareness. Those stories, and you push the right buttons.
On the flip side of that, when you've got to cut ties with someone, it's not like you love them any less.
Yeah.
And so there, I've watched that happen from my vantage point in years past, and I've always watched publicly. The headline is so-and-so no longer with University of fill in the blank. But then you hear the stories behind the scenes of maybe the extra step that head coach went to make sure I get him a job or I get her a job. And it's not technically in your job description, but do you consider that sometimes your responsibility of, I'm the one who hired you, so maybe it's my fault it didn't work out. Let me try and facilitate something on the way out the door for you.
One of the more interesting situations I've been in, not necessarily letting a guy go, but when you leave a place, like we came from Louisiana to Florida, and man, the investment that staff had made into that program over 4 years, and okay, this recruiting footprint, this league.
Can't take them all.
Correct. So that's a challenge. and making sure each one of those guys in that situation lands on their feet. That is one for sure that is always a challenge. And man, every day that's on the list of things to do. Is to make sure each one of those guys is in a position to where they can continue, because you wouldn't have been where you're at as an individual without the investment of all those people.
Some of the preseason lists are coming out. I don't want to mention any lists particularly, because that's not what we're here to talk about, but some of them have Florida listed pretty high. I know how much stock you put in that. That's what you base your entire existence on, is preseason rankings. But forget about that for a second. From your perspective, when you're looking at the opportunity now you guys finally have, once you've built it your way, this is all your team. All these guys are ones you recruited or you brought in. You've learned, you've grown, you've got the staff where you want it to be. What could this upcoming season be for you?
Well, I think we've got a lot of really important work right in front of us. I think we started summer A today, but our summer training block that's coming up is going to be extremely important. I think the number one thing that I would say that we learned last year was we learned to take great pride in how we compete, how hard we play, and then I think there's a belief level that we haven't had. We won 4 in a row, whereas the first 2 years we were fading at the end.
Right.
We win the bowl game. We sign a really good group. I think all of our processes are established, and we have a group that really thinks they can play with anybody. So it's important that we've been blocking out noise. Now we got to eliminate the hype, and we got to be right in there in the middle, and that's the work. And I think if we can focus on what we have to do today to get better. So I think that's always going to be my approach with our players, is like, look, we got work to do today, and how are we going to improve? So many things happen in this summer, just in terms of the leadership, helping these guys develop their voice as leaders. You have young players. We have 8 rookies that are showing up that are brand spanking new. And then we have all these young players in the bottom half of the roster that we have to get ready so they can contribute to the team in some way. And the summer is paramount for that. So right now, for me, this is about kind of starting the right way in the summer and getting ready for what we know is going to be an incredible challenge and very entertaining at the same time. So, but yeah, I think teams, I can talk to them blue in the face, but when you have team players that have been in the program for a number of years that have experienced the growth, that are up for the challenge, right? That was the message when we recruited these guys. And I think they sense that. It's right around the corner. So got to do the work today.
The nervousness meter here, when I was reading reports about DJ Lagway in the spring, it was up, and then I listened to you at the end of spring, and then it kind of subsided a little bit. Where are we at? We feel good on this come fall?
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're here. I mean, yeah, you see the concern meter.
Yeah, he's throwing 3 days a week. He'll be ready to go for OTAs here. Yeah.
We appreciate you, as always, having us here. Wish you the best of luck this fall.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Josh.